Hello everyone, I'm Joe Ackourey, and welcome to the Fly of the Week. For this episode, episode 32, I'll be tying everyone's favorite, the black woolly bugger streamer. It's a great pattern, fishes well in high, medium waters, representing a host of different types of food sources like crayfish, leeches, baitfish, and so forth. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, here we go. The beadhead or the conehead crystal woolly bugger. First step is placing the conehead or beadhead on the hook. And to achieve that, you put the point of the hook through the conehead, the tiny hole. There's the big hole and the tiny hole. I hope the camera picked that up. Place the point of the hook through that smaller hole, slide it up and over. And now we're tying a conehead here, but either way, the beadhead, conehead, or the regular beadhead will work just as well. I like the conehead version. Now, you guys know, first step is cover the entire shank of the hook with thread. It's very important. You want to have a nice thread base down so that whatever materials that you lay upon that thread base, it'll bite down much better. It'll make for a stronger fly, I promise. Notice I'm maintaining about 1.5 inches to 2 inches above the shank of the hook, max. I'm not way out here in left field. Keep it within 1.5 inches to 2 inches away from the shank of the hook. From the barrel of your bobbin down to the shank of the hook. About 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Okay, I brought my thread back to where the shank and the bend of the hook meet, and now the first material we're going to place on this fly to build this fly is Marabou. We're going to tie a black woolly bugger, black crystal woolly bugger. So the tail calls for black Marabou. So I draw down the fibers so that they're kind of even, and it kind of helps if you wet them a little too. And it becomes a lot more manageable. So a little bit of saliva, it'll help gather those fibers, and just tear that off like we do with any other fiber for hackle fibers. And I'm going to make the tail equal to the shank of the hook, so including the eye. So I'm going to kind of pop that in there. That's my first layer. Just kind of tie it in, ride it all the way up to the bead. Clip off your excess and return your thread after you kind of make sure it's all tied down. Very good. Now, another application. You can kind of, like I said, just wet the Marabou a little bit, dampen it, just to keep it kind of together a little bit while you're playing around, and just strip it down and off the main feather. Gather that bundle, lay it as close to the previous bunch as possible as far as alignment. Make sure your thread is all the way back. Okay. Secure that the same way you did with the first bunch. Ride that all the way up to the bead or the cone head, and come back with it with your thread. I'm going to put one more application on. Here's another hackle, or another Marabou feather. I like the way this is already aligned, so I'm going to just clip off the tip of that. Wet my fingers a little bit. See how nice it gathers it all for me? Line them up like the previous bunch. Secure it. I like a full tail, if you didn't notice, on my woolly buggers. Yeah, because when Marabou gets wet, it gets very thin, and I just like a nice full tail. That's my own personal preference. Once that's locked down, we'll get your thread back. So, and to check the length of the tail, we're a little bit long, and I purposely did that, just a tad past the eye of the hook. And what I like to do, I mean, to make it all even, I could cut it, which would make it look terrible. I'm going to show you guys a method that has worked for me pretty amazingly. You pinch it off and you break it, and it doesn't look like it's cut at all. It looks like it's just feathered really nicely. And again, you pinch it off, kind of snap it off, and the ends are just perfect. So that being said, let's move on to the next material we're going to put on this fly. And we're going to sneak a little bit of Krystal Flash. Again, I like Pearl Krystal Flash, as you guys know. So I'm going to put, let's just put 2 strands in there. 2 strands of Pearl Krystal Flash on each side of the tail. I'm going to put on my side first. Tie that in. I'm going to make them a little bit longer than the tail, maybe a 1/16 of an inch longer. I'm going to repeat the process on your side. Tie that down. Okay. Clip off your excess. There's my, this one's bending out a little bit. Oh, no matter. Okay, now we have our tail. Well, let's start off by we have our cone head. We have our tail equal to approximately the shank of the hook, including the eye. We have our Krystal Flash, 2 strands on each side of the tail. Now, the next step is I'm going to put in a piece of copper wire in the back here. Just tie it on and let it hang back and place it in my material clip. I'm not going to show you what that's used for just yet, but it'll be just a way that I like to attach my hackle at the end of this fly. So next is our body material. And again, I told you guys that I'm tying a crystal woolly bugger, and I like the opalescent, black opalescent for this fly. It's deadly, guys. Give it a shot. Expose the end of the Estaz. Yeah, I'm sorry if I called it Krystal Flash. I meant Estaz. Opalescent Estaz in black. Expose the ends by peeling off some of the material. You'll expose that little thread base. Attach that in. Okay. Bring your thread all the way up to up against the bead. Now you're just going to wrap this around. I kind of like to get my bobbin out of the way while I'm wrapping. I'm not overlapping anything. I'm just getting it out of the way. Get it tightly up against the cone head. Secure that with a couple of wraps. Good. Clip off your excess. There's your body. Secure it a couple more. Again, I'm using 8/0 thread. Now for our hackle. Our hackle is a saddle hackle. The fiber length is just about 2 gaps of the shank of the hook. I like to go at least 2 gaps with these woolly buggers. I'm going to strip off all the unusable material that I consider unusable for this buggy looking bug. This little leech pattern, this whatever. It imitates so many different types of trout food, from leeches to crayfish to just any kind of bait fish. It depends on what colors you tie it in. I typically like to tie it in olive and black, all olive. They're my main colors. And brown too, root beer in a opalescent Estaz. So now I stripped off the base of the feather, and now I'm going to attach that on my side, right where the bead and the body meet. Try to sneak a couple wraps in there. Okay, I'm going to clip off the stem. Put a couple more wraps in there to secure that hackle, just so it doesn't come undone while you're wrapping. Now, I don't need hackle plies with this because this hackle is quite long, as you can see. I'm going to take 1 full wrap in the front, and I'm going to equally space it going back. Going back. Actually, you know what? I'm running out of hackle here, so I'm going to grab my hackle pliers. Okay. Take my time. And there's my last wrap. Then I'm going to grab that copper wire that I tied in earlier, and I'm going to wrap on top of it. You won't even see it, guys. Just keep tension on the copper wire and wrap the copper wire over each wrap, and kind of get jiggy with the copper wire so you don't mat down too much of the Krystal Flash. As I'm going through it, just be careful you don't mat down too many fibers of the I keep calling it Krystal Flash, the Estaz. Okay, now comb this back. I like to wrap 1-2 wraps of that copper right up against the bead or the cone head in this case. Secure that. clip off your excess copper wire, comb these hackle fibers back, build a nice foundation for your head, your tying knot. Here we go. It's looking good. Tie your finishing knot. That's it, guys. A very good looking, effective woolly bugger pattern. You can tie it in a variety of sizes and colors. Very good looking fly. If you do have any Estaz fibers, you know, matted down from me wrapping the copper wire through the body to attach the hackle, just go in with your dubbing needle and tease it out gently. I don't see any on this one, but I'm just going through the motions to show you guys what you would do. But yeah, man, that looks deadly. Can't wait to fish it. Well, thanks for joining me on this episode, and looking forward to seeing you on the next. Tight lines, guys. Thanks for joining me.